Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
It's great to be here.
Today we're doing something a little different. We're looking at a transcript from a film about the life of Jesus, but specifically from the angle of the Gospel of John. And I think we need to say right up front, forget everything you think you know from Sunday school plays or holiday cards.
Right.
This source frames the whole story as this incredibly high stakes, almost a cosmic investigation.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's an investigation into what is maybe the single most controversial idea in all of human history.
Yeah.
The claim that a man, a human being, was also the eternal God.
Exactly. This isn't just a biography. It's more like a courtroom drama where reality itself is on trial.
Yeah.
The text presents this binary choice, and it's a stark one.
What's the choice?
Either this man is the creator of everything, or he's a fraud. There's no middle ground. And the text really digs into that collision between absolute faith and, hard-nosed skepticism.
So it's faith versus doubt.
Faith versus doubt, religious law versus what he claims is divine authority, the logic of humanity versus the logic of God. It's all in there.
That's the tension we really want to explore, this clash between these just mind-bending claims of divinity on one side. And on the other, you have critics using everything they have, logic, law, reason, to just shut them down.
It's a battle for what's real.
Okay, so let's open the file. Where does it even begin?
Well, that's the first interesting thing. It doesn't start with a baby in a manger. It doesn't start with history at all, really. It starts with philosophy, pure metaphysics.
Right, the famous opening line. In the beginning, the word already existed.
And that is the first massive claim. The text uses this term, the word, which, in the original Greek is logos.
Logos, I've heard that. What does it actually mean?
In ancient philosophy, logos wasn't just speech. It was the organizing principle of the cosmos, the divine reason that holds reality together.
Okay.
And this text just comes right out and says that this logos was with God and was God.
Wow, so no gentle introduction.
None at all. And it gets even more specific. It says, through him God made all things. Not one thing in all creation was made without him.
So the claim isn't that he's just a part of creation.
No, the claim is he is the agent of creation. He's the architect. I mean, right from the first paragraph, the text is fundamentally challenging a materialistic worldview.
It's drawing a line in the sand.
Immediately. It introduces this metaphor of light shining in the darkness. But the darkness, the human system, the status quo, it says it did not recognize him.
That sets up the whole conflict, doesn't it? The darkness isn't just like evil. It's ignorance. It's blindness.
Exactly. And then it calls its first witness to the stand, a man named John the Baptist.
And before we get to him, I just want to make a quick request to everyone listening. If you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button. It honestly helps us so much to keep these deep dives coming.
So, John the Baptist, he's crucial because the first thing he does is clarify what he is not.
Right. The religious leaders come to investigate him, and he says flat out, I am not the Messiah.
I'm just a voice, a signpost. He points to Jesus, and he uses this incredibly loaded phrase. He calls him the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world.
Which is a heavy sacrificial image.
Yeah.
But let's move from the high theology to where the rubber meets the road. This logos starts showing up at parties.
Ha! Yes. The first miracle, or as the text calls it, a sign, the wedding at Cana.
Turning water into wine.
And a lot of it, the good stuff too, apparently. But the text is careful to note this wasn't just to save the host from embarrassment.
What was it then?
It says, he revealed his glory. It was a demonstration, authority over matter itself.
But the real conflict, the spark that lights the whole fire, that happens next at the pool of Bethesda.
This is where that theme of God versus human rules just explodes. Jesus finds a man who's been an invalid for 38 years. 38 years. And he heals him instantly.
Which should be great news for everyone.
You'd think, but he does it on the Sabbath.
And for this culture, working on the Sabbath is a serious crime. So the authorities don't say, wow, a man who couldn't walk for 4 decades is now walking.
No, they say, who told you to carry your mat? They're obsessed with the rule book.
Their skepticism is actually kind of logical from their point of view, isn't it?
It is. They believe the Sabbath law comes directly from God. So if this man, Jesus, breaks the Sabbath, then by their logic, he cannot possibly be from God. It's a simple deduction.
But Jesus just shatters that logic.
He does. He says, my Father is always working, and I too must work.
And the source says that line, that specific phrase, is what made them want to kill him. Why was that so dangerous?
Because by calling God his father in that unique way, he was making himself equal with God. For a monotheistic culture, that is the ultimate blasphemy. He's not just claiming to be a prophet, he's claiming the throne.
And you can see how that leads to rejection. The text even gives voice to the skeptics. Later on, people in the crowd are muttering, right? They're saying, isn't this Jesus, the son of Joseph? We know his father and mother.
Precisely. That's the scandal of it all. How can the infinite transcendent God be this guy from a nowhere town like Nazareth?
We know his family. He's one of us.
We saw him grow up. Familiarity breeds skepticism. It's almost impossible to believe the creator of the cosmos is the carpenter you saw fixing a table last week.
And Jesus doesn't seem to try and soften it. In fact, he doubles down. He makes it harder.
Oh, much harder. Which brings us to the bread of life section.
Right? He miraculously feeds 5,000 people. They're thrilled. They want more. But the next day, he starts getting weirdly metaphorical.
He stops giving them physical bread and starts talking about spiritual bread. He says, I am the bread of life. And then he says the line that crosses the line for so many.
Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life.
Which just sounds grotesque, even cannibalistic if you take it literally. The crowd is totally disgusted.
So what's the point of saying something so offensive?
It's a filter. It's a test. The text says, many of his disciples turned back and would not go with him anymore. They literally say this teaching is too hard.
He's not begging for followers.
Not at all. He's presenting a reality that requires you to abandon your normal way of thinking. He's weeding out the people who are just there for the free lunch.
So the casual fans leave. But the conflict with the experts, the Pharisees, it just keeps getting hotter.
Mm-hmm. The scene with the woman caught in adultery.
They bring her to him as a trap.
Yeah.
The law of Moses says stone her. What do you say?
It's the perfect legal snare. If he says let her go, he's breaking God's law. If he says stone her, he violates Roman law and loses his compassionate reputation. He's boxed in.
And he just flips the whole script on them. He kneels, doodles in the dust, and says, whichever one of you has committed no sin may throw the first stone.
He shifts the trial from the woman to her accusers, from the courtroom to the conscience. He exposes the fact that their rigid legalism is just a mask for their own failures.
And they all walk away.
Every one of them. It's a victory, but it's one that deeply embarrasses the establishment, which of course just makes them hate him even more.
Speaking of embarrassing them, let's talk about the man born blind. This part is fascinating because the guy who gets healed is just so matter-of-fact about everything.
It's almost a comedy of errors for the authorities. Jesus heals a man who was blind from birth. They launch a full-scale investigation. They interrogate his parents. They interrogate him twice. They just refuse to believe it.
And they tell him, give glory to God. We know this man Jesus is a sinner because he healed on the Sabbath again.
Right. And the healed man has this incredible line. He basically says, look, I don't know if he's a sinner or not. I'm not a theologian. All I know is I was blind and now I see.
That's the triumph of raw data over theory, isn't it?
It's pure empiricism versus dogma. The man has the evidence, his own sight. The authorities have their conclusion that Jesus is bad. And when the evidence contradicts their conclusion,
They throw out the evidence.
they throw the man out of the synagogue. It shows that sometimes skepticism has nothing to do with a lack of evidence. It's about protecting a worldview you're committed to.
But all of this is building to this one massive verbal confrontation. Jesus is arguing with them about their ancestor, Abraham.
And he drops the ultimate bombshell. He says, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. And they just laugh at him. You're not even 50 years old. How have you seen Abraham?
And his response
Is maybe the most explosive sentence in the entire text. He says, I am telling you the truth. Before Abraham was born, I am.
I am. That's not just strange grammar.
No. I am is the divine name. It's the name God gives to Moses at the burning bush, Yahweh. He is applying the eternal, uncreated name of God to himself.
And they understood exactly what he was saying.
Instantly, the text says they immediately picked up stones to kill him for blasphemy. There was no ambiguity.
So the claims are now absolute. The tension is at its peak. And then we get the final sign. The one that forces everyone's hand, Lazarus.
Lazarus is the ultimate test case. He isn't just sick, he's been dead for 4 days. The text even makes a point of mentioning the smell, so we know this isn't a coma, this is biological death and decay.
And Jesus stands outside the tomb and calls his name, and Lazarus walks out, alive. Now, logically, you'd think, okay, game over. If you see someone raise a man from the dead, you have to believe, right?
You would think. But this is the dark, chilling twist in the narrative. For the authorities, the miracle doesn't lead to belief. It leads to a murder plot.
They hold a council meeting.
Yes, the High Council meets, and they say, and this is almost a direct quote, "Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and destroy our temple and our nation."
Wait, they admit the miracle happened? They say he is performing signs?
They don't dispute the evidence for a second, but they decide the evidence is too dangerous, so they have to kill him to protect their political power and the status quo.
That's incredible.
It proves that evidence alone doesn't create faith. You can be staring a miracle in the face and still reject it if the cost of believing is too high for you.
So the stage is set for the end. Jesus is arrested, and he's brought before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. This whole interaction feels different.
It's very different. Pilate isn't a religious critic, he's a cynical politician. He represents the secular state.
Jesus tells him, "My kingdom is not of this world. I came to testify to the truth."
And Pilate comes back with that famous, almost sneering question, and what is truth?
It feels so modern. What is truth? It's total relativism. He doesn't care about God or messiahs. He just wants to maintain order.
Exactly. He even says he finds no basis for a charge against Jesus, but he hands him over to be crucified anyway because the crowd is getting unruly and, it's the politically convenient thing to do.
And so we have the crucifixion. The text is very particular about the details, framing them as fulfillments of ancient prophecies.
Right. The casting lots for his clothes, the fact that none of his bones were broken, the narrative is constantly arguing. This was not a tragic accident. This was a plan being completed.
And his final words from the cross are, "It is finished."
A declaration of completion. The work is done.
But then he's dead and buried. And for a moment, it looks like the skeptics won. He was just a man, and now he's gone.
Until Sunday morning.
Until Sunday morning. Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb, sees the stone is rolled away, and her first thought is not resurrection.
What is it?
Grave robbers. A totally naturalistic explanation. They have taken the Lord out of the tomb. She thinks it's a crime scene, not a miracle.
But then Jesus appears to her. The reality starts to shift. But there's one character left who really stands in for us. For the modern skeptic.
Thomas.
Doubting Thomas.
He's the empiricist.
Yeah.
The scientist. He wasn't there when Jesus first appeared to the others. They tell him, "We've seen the Lord," and he just flatly refuses.
He says, "Unless I see the scars, unless I put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe."
He demands forensic evidence. He wants to touch the data himself.
And the text gives it to him.
It does. A week later, Jesus appears again, goes straight to Thomas and says, "Okay, here's the evidence. Put your finger here." And Thomas's reaction is the absolute climax of the entire text. He doesn't just say, "Oh, wow, you're alive." He makes the highest confession possible. He says, "My Lord and my God."
That's the verdict. That's the conclusion the whole text has been building towards. Thomas moves from the hardest possible skepticism to the highest possible faith.
But then Jesus says something that feels like he's breaking the fourth wall and speaking directly to the listener.
He does. He looks at Thomas and says, "Do you believe because you see me? Happy are those who believe without seeing me."
That's us.
That is the bridge to every generation that follows. The text acknowledges that we don't get to touch the scars. We have to weigh the testimony.
The story wraps up with this beautiful scene of restoration for Peter, who had denied Jesus 3 times. So there's grace even after failure.
It's a graceful end to a very intense argument.
So let's zoom out. We've looked at this text as a case for the existence of God in human form. What's the final takeaway?
Well, the source material is completely transparent about its own purpose. The last chapter says, "These things have been written in order that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through your faith in him you may have life."
So it's a piece of persuasion.
Absolutely. It argues that there's a stark binary choice. Belief leads to what it calls life, a connection with the divine, and rejection, or unbelief, leaves you in what it calls the darkness.
There's no room in this text for Jesus was just a nice moral teacher, is there?
Not at all. As we've seen, he claims to be the I am, the logos, the judge of all humanity. You either have to accept that massive claim, or you're kind of forced to side with his critics and say he was, at best, delusional. The text forces a verdict.
And that leads me to the final thought I want to leave everyone with. In this transcript, we saw people who had the ultimate proof. They saw a man born blind receive his sight.
They saw a man who was dead for 4 days walk out of his tomb.
They had physical, undeniable evidence standing right in front of them. And yet, many of them, maybe even most of them, still didn't believe.
Some of them decided to commit murder because of the evidence.
Exactly. So here's the question. If seeing literal miracles with your own eyes wasn't enough to change people's minds back then, what actually changes a person's mind? If seeing isn't believing, what is?
That is the question.
Thanks for thinking deeper with us today.
Goodbye.